Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Teachers Talk podcast. My name is Alex, but I commonly go by Jeff, as that's what my professional counterparts know me as. And today I'm going to be joined by two of my colleagues at York University, and you've seen them on the podcast before, David and Alex. Say hi, guys.
Hello, how you guys
How's
doing?
it going?
Perfect, yeah. So today we're going to be talking about remote learning. We just finished our first year of Teachers College, which was all online due to the current global situation that's going on. So we thought we would just spend some time and reflect on it a little bit. So I guess that brings me to my first question, and that would be, how did you all feel about the remote learning experience that we had?
Well, remote learning was an interesting one. I think there's definitely some upside. There's definitely some downside as well. Personally, I actually enjoyed it. I love to learn. I was, I guess, blessed with some good professors this semester and last semester. And it's been a really long time since I've been in the classroom. So I think it was really dependent on how the professor really runs the class because of the online setting. It's very difficult to create those social interactions and create connections in your class. And I feel like a lot of students are, I guess, not as open to asking questions, and it's really impacted student interaction and engagement for the most part. But for the connections that I did make, I did meet some good friends in the program that I still communicate with, uh, namely these guys, Alex and Jeff. So it's always nice.
Yeah, man, for sure. I mean, obviously, the social component and like when you're being in the field that we're in, having good social skills is kind of important because not only are you communicating with children and youth, but it's also parents, administration, so on. And so, developing friendships was definitely tough. Like I remember Jeff and I met on like the second day of class, and the reason was we were put into like a random Zoom call, and neither of our audios was working, so we were just like texting on the Zoom chat function, and then after we exchanged information, we became friends. But yeah, that part of the remote learning experience was really tough. Like actually meeting people, especially in a field that's so kind of people heavy and people dominant. And then another thing, kind of David, you spoke to was the organization and the way that the teachers and the professors kind of uh, portray things, the way they organize and explain stuff was not problematic per se, but at times like you could see that they were struggling as well. Like obviously it's tough for us as students, but they were struggling as well. Some of the faculty members a little bit on the kind of older side of things in terms of age, and so they were also struggling in a different capacity compared to us. But um, yeah, remote learning experience was, I mean, it was kind of like a day by day thing for me at least. You're going to enjoy some days, you won't enjoy others. Um, but yeah, the face to face, like the kind of physical social component was definitely missing for sure.
Yeah, and it's actually funny that you bring up when we first met in the science class, because I actually totally forgot about it. And it wasn't that both of our audios weren't working. You were on an old computer and your audio
Yeah,
wasn't working,
yeah, my
and
audio
I
wasn't
was on
working.
my computer, but I couldn't see any text in the chat function. I don't know what happened, but my computer
Yeah,
glitched out. So one of us couldn't hear and one of
one
us
of
couldn't
us couldn't
read.
type. Oh man, it was
It
brutal.
was
I
like,
forgot the
oh,
specifics, but all I know was that was like, oh man,
it
we're
was
like
so tough.
we're reading each other's like lips and facial expressions and like hand gestures. It's like, all right, this is sick. We've
Yeah.
been doing this for about 7 minutes. But
Yeah, no, it was
yeah,
it was definitely crazy though. Like I do think it did take a while for the technology to sort of catch up. I think that we were trialing out a bunch of different technology and everything was changing over very quickly, which is fine. But I think for me, like I really did love the remote learning. I think especially for a program like this, where it's not like it's a hands-on program in the sense of you need to go in and you need to do labs,
yeah,
right? Or you need to go in for like interviews and stuff like that.
hmm
I think this program is actually perfectly suited to be one of the one that goes online in the future,
yeah,
because everything is really self-directed. A lot of it is self-directed learning. It's, hey, read this and reflect on it, or like, what are your biases with respect to this issue, talk about it.
yeah,
So I do think that the remote learning suited the program. And I enjoyed it. I mean, it was nice waking up in the morning, but I will say, like, to David's point, the idea of student engagement dropping, you could tell.
Yeah, for sure.
Sometimes you'd be in a class and people would be snoring with their microphone
Oh,
on.
that was brutal. In Warren's class.
Yeah,
Oh man, that's a throwback. Like October Warren's class,
yeah, you know, like
8:30 in the morning. This dude was
exactly.
clocked out at like 9. Like, oh my goodness,
Yeah,
that's insane.
so that was definitely an issue. Um, but yeah, and I do think that remote learning can be better than in-person learning if done right, and I think we saw that as the year went on.
Yeah.
But for both of you, how much time did you spend doing remote learning per day, like for online classes, for assignments in school and everything else? And how does that compare to what you would have been doing if it was in person?
I personally think most of my hours would probably be fairly similar. Um, a few hours a day, were spent doing all the readings, which you would have to do if you were doing in-person learning, and then a couple more for assignments, reflections, just kind of letting the material sink in and everything. But I definitely miss that kind of bouncing ideas off of other people that you would be able to do in the classroom. So I guess I lost a few hours there, but I'd say I gain a few more hours just because being at home is so distracting.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
like personally, I'm a big library guy. I love
Yeah,
to go to the
absolutely.
library. I love to have that peace and quiet, get my work done, and then have the rest of my day. But when I'm at home, I'm looking around. I'm trying to ask my parents, my brother for ideas to bounce off, ask them how I'm going to approach some things. It's very different compared to in-person learning.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd say in terms of like time working on assignments would probably be the same, but also being kind of like a library heavy person, I like one thing that really messed me up kind of when I was at McMaster, which is where I did my undergrad. Pandemic for me, it was in my final year. And so the last 6 or 7 weeks of my final year, I was at home and like I'm a creature of habit. I like having a routine of, going to the library at this time,
Yeah,
being here, going to do this, going to do that. And that was kind of something that remote learning interrupted. And even at York, like obviously it's a bit of a commute for me, about 45 to 50 minutes. But I think though, just like the whole routine of even going to school is something that like it meant a lot for me. Like waking up, commuting, seeing friends on the bus and so on, bouncing ideas off each other before we had class. Um, and so that was like a big difference for me in terms of like comparing in person learning versus remote learning. Again, in terms of completing, like empirically completing assignments, I'd still probably spend 2 hours on this assignment, 2 hours on it, whether it was in person or over a computer. But just like the routine of being in person, um, and kind of being in a library. Obviously, there's a lot of distractions at home. I did save a lot of money being a remote learner, so that kind of helped me out financially. But yeah, in terms of like an actual number of hours spent on either research or a project, I'd say it's about the same, and that's probably what people coming into the program should expect in terms of
yeah.
assignments, at least.
Yeah, and I think that provided that the assessments were to be the same versus like online versus in-person schooling, um, I would say the time to complete the assignments and the time to complete class and your readings is the same. It doesn't really matter. Um, the big difference is the commuting time and the cost of commuting. And I think that's one of the reasons why I liked it. Um, so for me, I'm personally a morning person. So my productive hours are between 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. And like once I hit 3 o'clock, that really trails off. So it was actually really nice, even though we had morning classes, which sometimes would just be sitting there for 3 hours every day in the middle of my productive time. It meant that like I could get stuff done before school. I wouldn't need to be sitting on a bus. I wouldn't need to be commuting. And I mean, just like as you said, Alex, financially, I was probably saving, let's say $7 each way, so $14 a day at however many days. Let's just say
Yeah,
it works out to a couple grand over the course of 10 months that we've
yeah,
been doing school.
absolutely. Yeah,
Um, I'm getting married, and we're in a program where we don't get there's no co-op, there's no way to get paid while doing it unless you're going to be working a job.
yeah,
Um, So it was definitely nice to be able to save a couple grand not
Yeah.
commuting, and
Big
but
up
I
to
will
Jeff
say,
for
like,
getting married. Big up
yeah,
to Jeff for getting married. All right, we got to put that on the pod. Big up to Jeff for getting married.
yeah.
You can't have
So
us at the wedding, but we'll be there in spirit.
yeah,
We'll
it's
be
a couple
there.
months
Oh,
away. We're getting close. I'm getting suit fitted this weekend, so
yes, sir. That's amazing, man. That's
definitely
beautiful.
going to be interesting. But yeah, like I would say, sort of back to the question, like I would say I probably spent about 6 to 7 hours a day doing things, providing like I had a 3 hour class, about 3 hours of reading and 2 hours of assignment work. And if I was to be in person, it would be the same 6 hours, but it'd be about 4 hours of commuting.
Yeah.
So it'd be about 10 hours. So that's where the big time savings are. And yeah, I guess for each of you, what would you say are your benefits or drawbacks of online learning outside of obviously the face to face, which we just mentioned?
Well, I guess I'll start with some drawbacks. Definitely, just I feel like approachability was hit pretty hard with online learning. I feel
Absolutely.
like just not having that one-on-one with a professor in an online class kind of makes it more difficult to approach them and ask questions. I feel just not really getting to know people well and being able to, I guess, learn how to communicate with certain people to get to where you want to be when it comes to learning and teaching and anything else in general. Um, and then, of course, the biggest drawback of all, distractions, not being in person. Just everything around you is a distraction. Being kind of sucked up in your room and sitting on the computer is
For
very
10 hours a
difficult.
day.
Yeah. Benefits though, definitely saving money, convenience, rolling out of bed and being able to get on
Walk 5
the
steps to my desk.
computer. Money saving. In my personal experience, um, professors were quite helpful when you did ask for help. If you sent them an email, they were very understanding. Everyone was fairly good in communication and clarification. And I think that's about it, aside from, I guess, having more time to reflect instead of being commuting.
Yeah,
More time
absolutely.
to really get into the material.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll start on the benefits, I guess. I mean, we kind of said from a financial perspective, saves a lot of money. There's convenience. You get to stay at home, whether it's obviously home's always going to have distractions, but it's nice to be in, kind of a familiar environment while tackling a very novel and pretty much ever-changing situation as it pertains to, government rules and this and that. So those are definitely kind of benefits. Uh, my biggest, like, where I learned the most personally was in my placements from my mentor teachers. So that's where I learned a lot about kind of, how to navigate a school setting, how to, do this, do that, not do this, not do that, and so on. So that was kind of like the biggest benefit for me, as well as, having discussions with some of my TAs who do have actual teaching experience. That was also really helpful for me in kind of, um, I can't remember the term right now, but basically taking the knowledge I applied to the classroom, and then I can now envision it how I would apply it in real life in my teaching practice. So take what I learned in lecture and apply it to my teaching practice. In terms of a drawback, though, one thing that like, I consider myself a people person. I think you kind of have to be when you're in our field or our industry. But when, like, for some professors, and I believe David and I had this class together, for some professors, I've never met them. I never had a conversation with any of them. And it would be solely just like, watch a lecture that's 45 minutes long, go to your tutorial every other week for 30 to 40 minutes, and that's about it. Like, my one professor, she had like a coffee time or something online, like
Yep.
one Saturday, and I was there for like 5 minutes to just introduce myself, because when I was in my undergrad, I tried to go, not necessarily out of my way, but I tried to make time to meet my professor so they could see me as the person. Because again, being in our industry, it's very people oriented, it's very socially oriented. I want my instructor to just see me as a person, hear my voice, see kind of my mannerisms as best as you can online. So that was for me kind of like the biggest thing that I didn't like, was that, for some classes, it would just be like a talking head, a floating head from the professor's perspective. and I wouldn't really get to have a conversation with them about anything. So that was tough for me, kind of just being the person that I am.
Yeah, and I can definitely see how that would be difficult. I think that was like difficult for everyone, just not being able to say hi to the profs. I'm going to
Absolutely.
start with the benefits as well, I think. And I'm going to re echo time and like the time saving. But I'm going to put it more in the sense of because we had the extra time, I was actually able to put more effort into my assignments. I wasn't hitting things and being like, oh no, this is due tomorrow morning. I just need to sort of, throw something down on paper and hand it in. I was actually able to sit back, critically think and reflect on things, think about like how it made me feel or how it challenged what I knew, and then sort of address those in more of an authentic manner rather than just trying to regurgitate what the prof says back at you just because you're trying to get it done quick because you have so many things to do. Um, so that's where I think remote learning helped. It gave me more time to work on things. Um, some of the drawbacks, and I guess some of them were pretty big to me, is it all depends on who your profs are. And I found a lot of profs had very vague instructions, and they were sort of assessments that would be more assigned or talked about in class.
Yeah,
But when you're just providing someone written instructions on something, sometimes it can be really hard, especially if the instructions are very vague.
absolutely.
Um, And if you had questions in the moment about how to do stuff, sometimes you would send an email off to a prof, but then you wouldn't get a response for a whole day. And you'd sort of be sitting on an assignment like, well,
What do I
this is
do?
the time that I have to work on it. And I can't work
Yeah,
on it because I'm waiting to hear back about what I have to do. And it didn't happen on a lot of assignments. Most of them were pretty good. A lot of the reflection ones were, pretty easy. But any of the ones where we had to create products or videos or create websites, any of those sorts of things were just very vague. And when we hit our 6 week courses, and you used to get an assignment Tuesday that was due Thursday, and one, Friday that was due Monday, you didn't have time to sit on it and wait for a day for email responses. So I think that was one of the big drawbacks. And I think another one would be because you didn't get that face to face time and you weren't on campus, you couldn't even go see the advisors. So if you had questions about the program or what you needed to do, or what the direction of some things would be, just any program questions, the school really didn't provide online resources for that. You would email and sometimes you wouldn't hear back. Sometimes if an advisor didn't know the answer, they wouldn't even respond to you. Um, and I will say, like, the interactions I had with the advisors were good, but again, there weren't many online resources for us to use, right? It was all sort of, we're in a big class WhatsApp chat and everything is hearsay. If you had a question about something, you're finding it out from one of your peers and you have no clue if that's right or wrong. And there's a lot of people who have wrong information out there, you know, that you get and you're like, oh my goodness, like, what do I do now? I was
yeah,
totally like mixed up on things. Um, and to go on the resources, and this will sort of be my last point because I don't want to take up too much time with it, but I think that there weren't enough resources for using the technologies that we were asked to. So I remember when I was starting undergrad, the first class was literally how to use, at the time, it was, I can't remember what it was called. It's called Learn, which then became Desire to Learn, which then became Brightspace or something. It
yeah.
sort of evolved over the years from when I started university in like 2012, 2013. Um, but there wasn't that. And when we were starting using our platforms and all these video conferencing softwares, there was no like sit down like, hey, this is how you use them. It was like you're thrown into the fire and you just have to learn how to do it. And there was no help. And I will say York's online learning management system is very outdated. It is not organized. It is not very good. Um, and there is a large learning curve to figuring out how do I submit assignments? How do I access assignments? Versus other learning management softwares where there is a submit tab. So anytime you were submitting an assignment, that's always where you would be going. Um, Whereas this one would be sometimes you would just click on an item and there'd be a paragraph of information, and then right down below there'd be like an add submission button, but you couldn't see that from the homepage.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, it was easy once you got to know it. There was just no one to actually show you how to use it.
Mhm.
So I think that was a drawback. Um, and I'll end there because I think there are a few more things, but they're not very important and they're minor. Um, so I guess my last question would be, are there any tools or tips that you would recommend for students who are going to be starting remote learning or haven't experienced it before?
So I have a few key tips that I picked up this past year. Number one, in my opinion, is buy a physical textbook instead of an ebook. Just because my eyes are killing me by the end of the day, my overall fatigue, my overall tiredness is way up because of just reading online articles, online ebooks, being online for Zoom. And my other point would be take care of your mental health.
Yeah.
Go for walks, get
Absolutely.
outside, take a break and relax. Just you don't have to sit there for 3 straight hours doing your assignment just to get it done. Just take some time for yourself and just let yourself um, be physically like healthy.
Absolutely. I mean, David kind of took all the words right out of my mouth. You know, the main tip, I want to see if there's any like specific tools. If you have like some sort of calendar software to organize yourself, that'll be my first tool slash tip is to, you know, have an established routine of what you kind of want to do. Um, One tip I would say, make your primary learning space as comfortable as possible. You know, have space for your water bottle, for a snack, for your books, for your laptop, for this and that. Like you want to be comfortable in your setting because you will be there 7 to 12 hours pretty much every day. And then the second tip I would give is same as David said, you know, mental health is something that's taking a toll on the entire planet the last 14, 15 months. And so take time out of your day to go for a walk, to go work out, to go sit outside, you know, just like take a mental break from it all. Your mental health and your physical health is just as important as finishing your assignments. So David summarized it pretty well. I don't really have any need to expand on it, but that'll be about it. Stay organized and keep your mental health and physical health at the forefront.
Yeah, and I think those tips not only apply to students, but I think they also apply to teachers too, especially for their
Absolutely.
mental health.
Absolutely.
Um, for myself, I guess I'll say something a little different because definitely both of those were sort of on my list to talk about. Um, and the first one would be to have a designated workspace. So not only just like, keeping it clean and making sure that it's big enough for everything, but also just making sure that you're minimizing the distractions around yourself. I remember at the start of the year, there was someone, and I can't remember who it was, they said to put up like a curtain behind you. So that way you weren't seeing any distractions and it would block out a little bit of noise and stuff. And I found that personally helpful before I moved because it's not really possible in this room. But my second tip has to come down to exercise and eating properly because you're going to be sitting in a chair, as Alex said, 7 to 12 hours a day. You're going to be working on stuff. You're going to be staring at a computer screen. Um, and it's very, a body in motion is going to stay in motion and a body at rest is going to stay at rest. It's
Physics
very hard to
101,
get
guys.
motivated and it's hard. You're going to be so busy in the middle of the day that it's going to be hard to eat right. So what I found was I would meal prep Sunday night for my lunches for the week. That way I wasn't eating like some microwave food, pizza pops or something. Like there's nothing against doing that, but every day, day after day for 10 months, that's going to take
You
a
want to
toll on your
nourish your
body.
body. Yeah, you want to nourish your body appropriately.
Yeah, and like trying to get, even if it's just a 5 minute or 10 minute workout per day in the evening, like before dinner, just to sort of switch your mind from school to sort of something else. I found that personally really helpful. Sometimes that would just be going on like a nice walk or going for a run. Sometimes it would be, using some workout equipment at home. It was just something to break up the monotonous aspect of sitting and get my body moving. Because yeah, I did find like I was mentally drained in the evening. My eyes hurt from staring at a screen so much, and there's not much you can do right now. You sort of have to entertain yourself, which can be a little difficult. Um, and especially in the winter when nothing's going on and the weather's bad and you don't want to be outside, like you got to figure out something to do. You can't just sit at your computer all day. It's really not good for your mental health or your physical health. Um, but I think that's where I'm going to leave it for today. So thank you everyone who watched our podcast. I hope you enjoy it. And if you did, please like and subscribe to the channel. And with that said, we're going to be signing off. So we'll see you next time and have a great day. Stay happy, safe, and healthy, everyone.